All right, we're live. Let a couple people come on here, but we're going to be talking about calling 911 in an active shooter situation. So give it a minute, let a couple people get on, then we'll start talking about that topic for tonight. This is part of my Go Live Every Day in August series. So what is today? Today is the 10th, so this is the 10th live video that I've done in August, the Go Live Every Day in August challenge. It was just something fun to do and trying to put out some good information every day of this month. So we got a few people joining. Please, when you join, share, like, comment. That really helps. Hey, Brenda, but we're going to be talking about calling 911 in an active shooter situation today. So I appreciate the likes, appreciate the shout outs, appreciate the shares. I've had a couple of these, in like 24 hours hit 1,000 views, which is pretty cool. So, and it's thanks to you guys that are sharing and liking and comments. All of those really help more people see. So I appreciate that. Before I start talking about the call 911, I want to remind people, please go to surviveashooting.com. Take the 50-question assessment. See if you're actually prepared. Check out the tips. Check out the information there. And look at having me come to help your organization with one of the live Survive a Shooting classes. Also go to surviveanddefend.com if you haven't already signed up for the Sunday safety and self-defense tips. Those weekly emails every Sunday provide information on staying safe and defend yourself, as well as active shooter stuff. So go to both of those websites and make sure you sign up for that. Hey, Kevin, good to see you. Again, thank you for any comments. Hi, a question, anything, those help. And if you have questions, please be sure to ask them. So we got people watching now. I sort of wasted a little bit of time at the beginning, that intro, letting people join. So now let's talk about calling 911 during an active shooter situation. This is something when we do scenario training that we rehearse and practice. And a lot of people find out it's not as easy as you might think. We're just going to call 911 if something bad happens. Well, it's harder to do when you're under the stress of an emergency. When an active shooter situation goes on, even with the training, when we have the blanks being fired and we get people's adrenaline going, they find out that calling 911 and remembering what to say is harder than they think. And that's why I'd like you to practice and rehearse calling 911 along when you're practicing, rehearsing, visualizing everything else that we teach you in the Survive a Shooting classes. So when do you call? And that might seem obvious. You call when the shooting starts, right? Is that when you call? As soon as the shooting starts, is that when you call 911? Got any answers? What do you think? Go ahead and give me a quick answer before I tell you what I think. Anybody have some thoughts of when you would call 911 when the shooting starts? Brenda says no. Brenda's right. You don't call 911 until it is safe to do so. You may have to escape the safety, and then when you're someplace safe, then you can call 911. You may not be able to escape, but you have to deny and barricade. Once you have a secure barricade and everything's set and you're safe, and you can do so without the shooter identifying you're there to want them to come through, then you can call 911. Kevin says get safe first and hit. That's right on, Kevin. Got to be safe first. Soon as you see problems. That can be true, Brenda, if you suspect a shooter or you suspect something's going to happen and you can safely call then, great. But when the bullets are flying and the shooting's happening, you got to make sure you get yourself to safety first. And that's either escape to safety, deny and barricade, or if you have to fight and attack that guy, say he burst into the office or classroom and you grab the fire extinguisher, sprayed him and smashed him in the head and beat him into the ground. Then, even before you call 911, I want you to make sure the room is secure and there's no other threats that can get to you. Make sure you're safe, or you escape out the building, leaving that guy's smashed head on the floor, but get someplace safe. Now, a thing you got to think about too, are there wounded? If somebody's been shot and they're bleeding out, I want you to put that tourniquet on and stop the bleeding. Either pressure bandage, tourniquet, the things we teach in the course before you call 911. Because he might not or she might not have time for you to call 911 first. Stop the bleeding, save the life, then we call. First aid training teaches to check the area or for safety, then call, then care for injured. And I'm going to say that depending on the injury, if it's a life-threatening bleeding from a gunshot wound, we might want to stop that bleeding first. We do want to stop that bleeding first, then call. If it's a minor injury that doesn't need immediate attention, call and then treat the wounded. So you're just going to have to play that by ear depending on the situation you're in. But by all means, you need to make sure you're safe before you call. So then when we call, and we do this in the live scenarios and people start having trouble with it, what do you tell the 911 operator? And instructors, we will often play a 911 operator, 911, what's your emergency? And see how people will respond. And especially when they're under stress, it gets difficult. We don't want to waste time saying, I'm scared, there's a shooter, there's bullets, there's dying, I'm so scared. They know you're scared. And a good 911 operator will try to help you breathe, calm down, and help elicit the information they need. They need to know the location. Okay, so wherever you're at, you should know the address of where you're at. Okay, so, or the location, if it's a general description that, all the law enforcement would know. So we need to know that. And then you need to start giving them specific information. If there was a shooter and you saw the shooter, you want a description. Can you describe the bad guy? Can you describe what they're wearing? How big or tall or short or heavy or thin? Any kind of descriptions. If you can tell what the weapon was it a rifle versus a handgun? Okay, was it a knife that they were attacking with? Because it's not just shooters that we have to worry about in these situations. But the more descriptions you can give, the better. Were there explosives? Did he have on a suicide vest of explosives? Was there a backpack? Was he carrying a backpack with something? So any of that information that can help the law enforcement find that bad guy is what we need to do. And then the more specific we can get of the location of the bad guy. And remember, police officers might not know the building like you know it. So you can't say, he's in the conference room. Where is the conference room to a law enforcement officer showing up? They're not going to know that necessarily. So we want to use cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west. He came in the west end of the building, went to the second floor, and the second door on the right is the conference room, number 232, or what, as much specifics as possible. Now, one of the things we're doing here in Missoula, and they're doing it other places of the country too, we're putting the room numbers on the outside of the windows of the schools. So if somebody in the school has an emergency, they can say, room 123, and outside the building, the police officers can tell what room 123 is by looking at the windows. So it's also good to have those room numbers on the inside of the door as well as out in the hall, because when you're inside the room, where are you? And if it's somebody new or a substitute teacher, they want to be able to identify. Great idea. Thanks, Brenda. Yeah, so you want whoever's in the room to be able to know where they're at. You want the police on the outside of the building to know. And here's another thing that we've talked about. Young kids, are they going to say room 123 or are they going to say Mrs. Smith's room? Okay, so maybe we want to put the teacher's last name on the outside along with that room number, because if a young child, and I believe in teaching kids how to dial 911, if they're the ones calling, how would they identify that room? Mrs. Smith's room or room 123? And so we're trying to make it as easy as possible for anyone to call 911 and identify the location of the bad guys, location of wounded, location of people barricaded in. and the law officers responding to be able to know immediately what room that is and be able to find it as quick as possible. So the big things that we want to identify to help those law enforcement: bad guy, how many, descriptions of them with as detailed descriptions as you can provide, and then the location of the bad guy as detailed as you can, where someone that doesn't know the building can find them. So using room numbers, cardinal directions, and those kind of things to help someone who doesn't know find and locate that bad guy as quick as possible to stop the shooting. And that's the police officer's #1 job. They are going to stop the threat. They're not going to help wounded until the threat has been neutralized and there's no more killing, because their primary goal is stop the killing. Once that's done, we can also, once you've told the bad guy in those locations, go ahead and identify wounded location and let the 911 operator know how many wounded, how severe the injuries are, what kind they are if you know, and give that information as well, because once the threat's neutralized, they're going to be looking for and trying to help those wounded. So if you've provided that information, it's good for them to know. Now, what about your location? That depends. If you have escaped to safety and you're across the street or 2 blocks away because you ran out of the building and calling 911, your location isn't as important. You can say, I'm a safe location, I escaped, and tell them what they need to know when they're going to the threat. Now, if you're barricaded in a room, you can let them know, I'm barricaded in room 223 and we're safe at the moment. Let them know that. That's one room that they don't have to worry about. Maybe the shooter came into your room and you clubbed him like I taught or like I teach with the fire extinguisher. Then he's on the ground. You have removed the weapon from him. You want to relay that information. I'm in room 123. I smashed the shooter's head with a fire extinguisher. He's unconscious. I'm in possession of the weapon. I have it set on a desk. And in the live courses, we actually teach people what to do with that weapon. And usually what I'll do is, I don't want to be holding it because the police don't know necessarily, right? So what I do and what we teach is I'll put the weapon right here and the bad guy's laying over there. Maybe I knocked him unconscious. Maybe co-workers have him pinned to the ground. We tackled him. They're holding him to the ground. I have the weapon sitting on a desk here. If something happened where he got up and he tried to attack me or someone else again, I could access that weapon to use it. If the police come in, my hands are clear, they see I'm not a threat, I move away from the weapon, I say the shooter's weapon is there, he's down over there. Because we don't want to be perceived as a threat by the law enforcement, and because they don't know who's doing what, okay? Brenda says, it's a shame our schools have come to this. It really is, Brenda. But, I'll tell you, back in the 1700s, there was a school shooting and massacre of kids. And real close, it was in Philadelphia. You can look that up. And I talk about that in my classes just to illustrate that it's not a brand new thing. They've been attacking the soft targets of schools for a long time. The problem is it's happening a lot more frequently now. And so one of the reasons, this is so important is because of the frequency. And the FBI statistics show that it is increasing. And it's not just schools. Schools are not the #1 location of active shooters. Businesses are. And our worst active shooter to date in this country was at a business. It was at that nightclub in Orlando a year ago with 49 innocent people being killed. So, but they are happening in schools, they're happening in buildings. The last thing I wanted to say about calling 911 is call. Too many people sometimes think, well, someone else will be calling. Call. Call and provide the information that you can provide that will help those responding, stop the killing, and then help the injured the quickest. Once that 911 operator has gotten all the information they can from you, they may hang up because they're taking other calls. And they want to get as much information that they can that will help the responding officers, and they're relaying that to those responding officers as they respond, because every bit of intelligence that we can provide can help them stop the shooting, stop the killing as fast as possible, and then help the wounded. So be sure you call. And then, do the things, that I talked about in this video. Make sure you relay that information to the 911 operator to help that operator help the responding officers. That's what it's all about. Every second counts. In some of the statistics, they say a person dies every 15 seconds in some of these shootings. That means if we can cut 1 minute off of that officer's response time because of the information we provide, that could save up to 4 people. Okay, so we want to give them the best information as possible. And when you're under stress, it's hard. So practice this. Go to a location and just think, if I had to call 911 right now, what information could I provide? And start going through that and rehearsing and practicing that, and you'll be better at it when the time comes. Also know how to use the phones and how to call 911 with the phones you're using. I'm from Philly and have never heard that. It was in the 1700s. It's like 1764. It was in Philadelphia. It's escaping me, and I teach this stuff too, and I don't have my PowerPoint in front of me to help me. But it was a massacre back then, and almost all of the kids in the schoolhouse were killed. If you hold on 1 second, I will tell you exactly. I'll bring that up because I usually have it on the tip of my tongue, and because I'm talking about something else. It was July 26th, 1764, a log schoolhouse in Pennsylvania. Enoch, and that's E-N-O-C-H, Brown, and 9 children were killed. So Mr. Brown was the headmaster. So you can look that up and look up, Enoch Brown massacre. That was one of the first mass school killings that I was able to find in the research. Kevin Brett just put a link there. Thanks, Kevin. So there's a link that Kevin Brett just put talking about this. So 1764 was one of the first mass school killings in this country. And I put that out in my programs just to illustrate that it's not a brand new occurrence. It's just they're more frequent and worse now. So really appreciate you looking up that link, Kevin, and putting that there. But back to 911, Brenda says, very interesting. Yeah, it is. Because, and I'll tell you, there was a bombing in 1926 where a man blew up a school and killed a ton of people. And that's actually the worst killing, if you want to look at numbers of casualties in this country, was that bombing. And that was in Bath, Michigan. So research Bath, Michigan bombing of the schoolhouse. He had explosives in his truck, and he drove his truck right up and blew up the school. And I forget the exact numbers killed there. What was the Bath killing? 38 elementary school children and 6 adults killed in the Bath Township of Michigan. And it was in 1927, not 26. So that's, the highest casualty rate of a school incident was in 1927, Bath, Michigan. 38 kids and 6 adults killed in that one. So killing students, killing kids at schools, not a new thing. It has been happening for a long time. It's more frequent now, and the FBI statistics show that it's more frequent. But back to 911. We sort of got off on a tangent, which is okay. People ask questions, go on those tangents, it's fine. I'm here to teach and here to help educate people. But call 911, provide that information that we talked about in this video. Are there any questions about what we covered? I want to make sure I answer questions. And again, surviveashooting.com, surviveanddefend.com. Go to both those websites, and there's information there to help keep you safe. Sign up for the Sunday Safety and Self-Defense emails. You get those every Sunday, and I talk about all kinds of safety issues, as well as defending yourself, as well as active shooter incidents. Anybody else have a question? I really appreciate the little thumbs going up across. Those help. I see some different people. Kevin says, I found that it's easier to use Siri and say 911 sometimes than it is to click on the right buttons and get 911 when your hands are shaking. And that's what I was about to say, and then we got caught off in that tangent. Know how to use the phone that you're operating. And that means, do you have to call an outside number? If you're on a landline in a building, is there something you have to push before you can call 911 to get an outside line? If you're on a cell phone, what buttons have to be pushed to get 911? And can you push them quickly, especially when you're under stress and your hands are shaking and you're scared? If Kevin's saying Siri works better. And that would obviously be an Apple phone, but I know that the Android operating systems have equivalent things. Make sure you know how to call 911 on the phone that you're going to call from, or you're most apt to call from, in an emergency. Practice that. Make sure you can get to it quickly. It's not as easy as people think sometimes when they're scared. You got to remember, when that adrenaline hits, sometimes we can't do our fine motor skills, which, punching numbers and doing stuff is a fine motor skill. We've had people at different locations, businesses and schools, where we've tested their lockdown procedures, their 911 procedures, and some of the things that they thought they would do were a lot more difficult when it came to trying it under stress. And we've had businesses and schools change their procedures because of that. Got other people joining. Any questions about calling 911 in an active shooter or an active threat situation? And I covered a bunch of information here, and I'm willing to answer questions. Don't want to repeat myself too much, but I want to answer questions if you have them. I don't have a lot of time because I'm getting ready to go teach here pretty soon. So I am going to sign off really quick because I got to go teach Hapkido at 8 o'clock. But want to make sure I answer any questions people might have. Without questions, again, share this. Get it out there to people. Comment after the fact. I will answer all comments later. If you comment later, I'm still going to comment and answer. And if you have topics you want me to talk about, put them in the comments. I'll reply right there, and then we'll do another live session with that topic. So with that, thank you, everybody. Go to Survive and Defend, sign up for the email, go to Survive a Shooting, and check out the 50-question assessment. See if you are prepared as you think you are. See if your organization is prepared as you think it is. If not, get me in there to do some training. I'd be happy to come and help you. Other than that, have a great night. I'm going to go do some Hapkido. You enjoy whatever you're going to do tonight.